The best way to talk about, I think, scale and Taproot Foundation is to talk about the journey we've taken to sort of help you understand where we are today. I started Taproot, I think, with the similar vision and motivation of many Ashoka Fellows, where you think, I'm going to change the world, I see this problem, there's so much need out there, and you sort of see the way to plug a gap in society. And you start down the path of sort of feeling like you're going to plug this gap, you're going to prove that this works, you're going to bring it everywhere, you're going to reach every single person in need, and you get so much fire in your belly, you start moving that direction. So we did that, with our model, trying to prove that pro bono could be a viable way to help nonprofits in a scalable way, trying to figure out how do we help thousands and thousands of nonprofits. And we were incredibly successful. We opened 7 different offices across the US, doing hundreds of projects. We became the largest nonprofit consulting firm in the country. And as I like to joke, we celebrated for about 5 minutes and then realized how pathetic that was when you think about how many nonprofits were still not getting what they need, how many business professionals were still not doing pro bono service, or any service for that matter. And sort of realize that no matter how big we got, if we were 10 times that size, 10 times being the biggest, we still wouldn't fundamentally be changing the equation, delivering enough need. Sort of came to the moment of realization that we had to change how we define scale. Shut down 2 offices, thought about, instead of how do we scale to meet this need, how do we take what we've learned and influence others and influence the marketplace so that hundreds of pro bono programs would get started and happen. So, we're now working with 30 different companies where they're paying us to build their pro bono programs. We lobbied the president to create $1 billion plus change, and that campaign's now had, I think, $1.6 billion in pro bono pledged. We're helping influence the rise of pro bono internationally. We're actually this fall about to publish a book powered by pro bono, which takes everything we've learned in our 10 years and makes it accessible to every nonprofit, so they don't just have to use Taproot, but they can actually become more effective themselves in using pro bono without us. So trying to really look at scale not in revenue, not in staff, not even in program delivery, but more in the success of our field. As when we were sort of at our biggest in terms of program delivery, a couple of things really caused me to realize that we were still just a drop in the bucket or ocean or whatever cliche. One is just the fact that we get so many more nonprofits applying to us than we can ever help. And many of these organizations are greatly in need, they're totally ready for the service, etc. We just fundamentally didn't have the financial resources to do it. And there was just a limit to how much of that would happen. And we just sort of realized at that point, like, we're not serving all these organizations, and we really won't. And the other thing that was really standing out was get emails from nonprofits in mid-sized cities across the U.S. where we don't have an office that really needed the help, and we just realized we could never economically have a model that would enable us to be in Des Moines. Just couldn't happen. And realized there had to be a better solution, and that we couldn't just scale the programs that way. So it was sort of getting this feedback of just much more of a tidal wave of need than we felt like we could address. At the very first year, inception of their ideas, to think about success differently. So I think a lot of us are influenced by the idea of an entrepreneur, which is very much built on a capitalist, commercial idea of growing revenue. That's how it's measured. It's the size of the organization, not the impact of the organization. And if you change that mindset and start off and say, 20 years from now, what change do you want to see in the world? And then say, what are the assumptions, or what is it you're proving that's sort of the disruptive program that's going to change this issue, and figure out, with us, with pro bono, was people didn't believe in pro bono. They said it's not effective, it never gets done. I thought it could, and what I should have done in retrospect was say, what do I need to do? What are the few things I have to do to prove that pro bono is viable, so that all the naysayers would change their mind, that would then tip the issue to the people's mindset about pro bono. So I think similarly, if you're a starting social entrepreneur, think about what is it that you're telling people and they're saying, oh, that's not possible, you can't do that. Think of yourself less as an entrepreneur and more as a scientist who's trying to prove that this thing everyone says is impossible is possible beyond a reasonable doubt. And don't try to scale or grow any bigger than necessary just to prove your science experiment. Once you've done that, then you can sort of think about how do you get 1,000 organizations to adopt it, or get the government to adopt it. So make that change at that level. Don't think about yourself like a McDonald's where you're trying to figure out how to have a store on every corner. Think instead about proving that your idea actually is viable.